Going into the trip, or even like before, I just had no experience with Spanish at all. So it was definitely something that I was a little worried about, but then I also knew that there are people on the trip who could translate for me, and there would be translators there. It was definitely difficult being there and feeling like I couldn't connect with people or understand, and I just felt like I was having less meaningful experiences than the people on the trip who did speak Spanish.
If there wasn't a language barrier, I know I could have connected to the people a lot more and on a much deeper level.
I could understand what the tour guides are speaking, for example, the museum director when he was talking to us, and there were a lot of differences often between what they were saying and what the translation ended up being. And so for me, I thought I was glad I spoke, because I think I got more background information and just more context in general than if I'd just been trying to piece together the translation.
There was an instance where we were mixing cement and there was a pile of dirt and we had to pour water into the pile of dirt, but they were really specific about where they wanted the water, and so they pointed and they were like, "Aquí?" And I said, "Aquí?" which means here. And then they kind of just nodded at me, so I poured it, and then they were like annoyed. I could clearly tell by their facial expressions that I had poured it in the wrong spot. And then I went over to Teresa and I asked if they were making fun of me, and she said yes.
Because again, since I do speak Spanish, there's not the need to have someone there who can translate, which I think lets the conversations be a little bit more personal sometimes. People are a little bit more willing to talk if it's just the two of you.
So what I loved about the trip was that even with the language barrier, we were still working together with the people there, and it was like we were a team.
I have this scenario that I play in my head sometimes of someone asking me to hand them a hammer to build a latrine, and I don't know what the word hammer means, and I just stand there confused. So I guess in my head it's if you the more of a language you know, the more you're able to help people better, and the less that you know, the more that it's going to be confusing and chaos.
On a larger scale, people can come in and do entire projects in a community and not understand that that might not necessarily be what is needed because of a language barrier or a miscommunication. Not having someone along who is fluent to go with you, or just not entirely understanding the language and the culture, can make it really difficult to do service.
You can still have so much to gain from these experiences. So even though language, it can have its value, but it also doesn't take away the value of the trip itself.
A lot of the stuff that actually we as Juntos stress, which is more of the community building and forging different connections between people, as well as just going and physically doing the act of service. I think that is definitely a lot harder to do without speaking the language.
I think that language in general helps connect the people doing the service with the people that are benefiting from the service. It provides a way to gain a connection with the community.
It kind of made me think about how people who don't speak English in the US must feel, and I think that was a good lesson for me personally, to see how that feels and how that can be very challenging. So I think that's something really special about service, that it brings people together even though you don't have even though you have that language barrier. Probably would have been easier if we didn't have it, but I'm glad that it wasn't as restrictive.